Okay, so it's just about noon, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Anita Manuel. I am the Associate Director for the Career Center, and I will be your host today for this Job and Internship Fair Success Workshop. The workshop webinar will be recorded, so if you want a copy of the recording, please go to the chat box, and there is a Google form there that you can fill out, and then we'll know exactly where to send a copy of the recording. We'll be going over some best practices for the upcoming virtual fairs. And at the end, we will have time to answer the Q&A questions that you may have. So if you have questions as I'm going through the presentation, please feel free to place those in the Q&A box. And we will also have two career counselors who will be answering questions as we go along. So Kristen Keller and Judy Garcia, two of our career counselors, will be manning the Q&A. And we'll go ahead and get started. So just a quick overview of what you can expect for today's webinar. The first thing that we'll review is how to find and register for the fairs. Since they are all virtual and offered through SJSU Handshake, you do have to register for them in advance. We'll also go over some best practices and tips for how you can research employers before you actually meet with them, which will also help you develop your story or what you're going to say to them. Then we'll give you some tips on the best practices during the fair when you're actually attending the day of the fair, and then how you can best follow up and connect with employers post-fair. So first and foremost, you have to find the right fair for you and then make sure that you register for them in advance. This is a listing of our upcoming fairs for this semester. We already had our part-time job fair, but the next fair that's coming up on the 22nd is our STEM undergraduate job and internship fair. And the registration for that fair is already open. The next fair after that is our STEM graduate fair, and that is by invitation only. So students who have qualified for this fair will receive invitations via Handshake. And then September 29th, we'll have our Business, Financial Services, and Logistics Job and Internship Fair. And registration for that will open this week on the 16th. And then last but not least, we have our Health and Human Service Job and Internship Fair, which will be on October 8th. And the registration for that fair will open at noon on the 25th. What you'll notice is that each fair will have its own set of requirements to attend. So I will show you what the registration looks like in Handshake, but it is important that you read the requirements before you actually register for the fair to ensure that you're attending the fair that's a best fit for you. What this process will look like is if you actually go to our website under resources, you can directly access our Handshake link for single sign-on. But a quick way to get there outside of our website is just to go to sjsu.joinhandshake.com. And you'll use your 9-digit tower card number as well as your password and everything else that you use for your single sign-on to access the database. And once you log in, this is what your home page, landing page will look like. And so in order for you to directly go to the fairs, you want to click on the Events tab. Once you click on the Events tab, you'll get a sub-menu of how you can search the events. So in addition to career fairs, we also list conferences, challenges that employers are sponsoring, specific information sessions for employers. So there are a lot of events that you can participate in, but for the sake of this particular workshop, we're gonna just search by career fair, and there is a filter for that. Once you select the career fair filter, you're gonna get just the listing of the upcoming fairs for the semester. And you'll look at the ones that are of interest to you. And if you just click on the title, it will actually open the registration for you. So in this example, I'm just gonna use the part-time virtual fair since it's already passed. When I click on the title, you'll see that all of our fairs are going to look the same as far as the date and time and a short descriptor of what the fair is about and the types of positions that might be offered. In addition, you're going to see when the registration opens, and the registration button is in the top right-hand corner there. So I'm going to go ahead and click through that. Now, this is an important step because the employers have two ways that they can actually connect with students in a virtual fair. One option is that they're able to schedule one-on-one appointments with you, almost like mini interviews. The other option is that if employers would like to speak to a group of students at the same time, they can offer group sessions. And so students can register for either the one-on-one sessions with employers or group sessions as well. I would encourage students to sign up for both options because some employers may have more options through groups because they can see more students. You'll still get great information about the employer and what they're seeking, as well as how to best apply to their opportunities. And there is a Q&A function, a chat function in the group features. The one-on-ones are really helpful as well because you'll directly be speaking to an employer through a video chat, but there may not be as many open sessions for the one-on-ones. So if you want to be able to do both types of connections with employers, both groups and one-on-one, you actually have to change your privacy setting. And so this box will automatically pop up when you click register if you have your privacy settings set to just private, which means you would not be able to actually interact with the employers. So the two options here is if you want to participate in both the group sessions and one-on-one, you have to switch your visibility to community, which allows all employers to see your profile in Handshake, but also will allow other students or alumni who are in the platform to also be able to see your profile. If you only want to be able to do the one-on-one appointments with employers, then you would just select employers, but that would not allow you to then register for the group sessions. So that is just something to keep in mind. In my case, I'd like to be able to connect with employers in both formats. So I'm going to change my setting to community, and then I'll just click update. Once you do that and you click on the employer name that you're interested in, it will actually bring up the interview schedule times. So in this example, there's two recruiters that are actually interviewing for positions that they have open for their particular organization. One is listed as the owner and managing director, and the second person is listed as the manager. So for me, I probably would really want to meet directly with the owner and managing director. So I'm going to pick his schedule, and maybe the most convenient time for me is at noon between some of my classes, so I can squeeze in a 10-minute one-on-one with that employer. So I'm going to click on the noon opportunity, and once I click on that and hit confirm, that I'm actually scheduled to meet with that employer at that time. That is finalized once you hit confirm. So if you need to change or cancel your appointment, you would have to re-log in, and you would have an ability to cancel that appointment if needed. Also, once you click confirm, when you log back into Handshake, you will have your own schedule show up of when your meeting times are with employers. And that is where you'll go to actually start your video chat with that employer the day of the fair. So you can go ahead and click on your scheduler, and when you click on your appointment time, it'll actually open up the video chat room in which you'll be meeting with those employers. In some cases, you may see that if you join the registration, and let's say it's the day or two after registration opens, there may be limits on how many sessions are open. So I just want to remind you that it's really important the minute registration opens for a fair that you register ASAP, because it is a first come, first served basis. So there are going to be some limited slots for interviews with employers or group sessions. However, employers can add sessions all the way till the day of the fair. So if you go in and you don't see any appointment times available with a particular employer that you're interested in, don't worry. You can check frequently and come back, because it's very likely that they will add new sessions. And then if there is an employer who does not have any openings, even if it's the day of the fair, I would definitely click on their icon. So at the bottom here, you'll see this arrow with the little apple there. That's the icon for Apple computers. If you click on that, it will actually take you to their company page in Handshake. And there will be listings of open positions. So you can directly apply to those positions, which I would encourage you to do even if you can't have a one-on-one with an employer, because they'll be actively looking at those applications as part of their recruitment process. The second thing you'll want to do is you can follow the company in Handshake as well. Once you follow the company, what's really helpful is that if there are updates of new postings or jobs that they have, you will get an alert on that. And also, if they are looking for talent, they can actually search for candidates in Handshake based on those who are already following them. So if you want to come up in searches that employers are doing, it's really important to follow the companies that you're most interested in, because there are ways for employers to filter out candidates that are already following their company, because they feel that those are people who are most interested in their organization. So that's an easy way to start popping up on the radar of employers, is if you start following their organizations in Handshake. So once you figure out which fair you want to attend, you want to make sure that you do your homework before you meet with those employers. And this is especially important in this virtual environment, because the sessions that you have with employers are only 10 minutes long. So you'll have just enough time to introduce yourself, tell them exactly what types of positions you're interested in or why you're interested in that particular employer, and then have them ask you some questions about your experience. So the research piece is probably the most important part of preparing for any employer interaction. So there are a few key questions that we want you to keep in mind as you're starting to collect information about employers. The first one seems obvious, but it's actually probably the most important thing that you should be aware of, is what positions are these employers actually hiring for? Because that is their most immediate need, and they're most likely to ask you about your qualifications as it relates to those positions. And so the easiest way to do that would be to see if they had anything posted in Handshake, but we'll also talk about looking at LinkedIn to get some information about this as well. And then I would really recommend that, in addition to seeing what positions they have posted, to really read the job descriptions very closely, because they're basically telling you the main, most important traits or experiences that they're wanting for those particular roles. And if you have some of those experiences, those are the stories that you're going to want to tell first, how you most directly connect with those positions. It's always important to show employers if you have done some of your homework as far as knowing what they're known for, what they do well, if they've been in the press at all, if they've had any awards. It's impressive if a candidate can say, in addition to the job description, I've also noticed that on your Twitter feed that you recently released your latest financial outcomes and you're doing great this quarter. Things like that are not commonly done by most candidates, so it is an easy way for you to stand out, is if you show that you've done some research beyond just, let's say, their website, but you also have some ideas of what they're best known for, anything related to the culture of the company, what they value in their people and teams is important. If there's any alumni that work at that company, that's also a great resource for information to figure out what types of candidates do well at that organization. Definitely want to know what the mission and the vision of the company is. And this is more an ability for you to connect with how you might be a good fit for an organization. in addition to can you do the job, which is the job description piece, it's, you know, will you do the job? Will you be motivated? And how will you fit in with my current team? And that's really along the vision mission piece of an organization. So are your values, what's important to you, do they align with what's important to the organization as well? Absolutely, what services and products they make or offer, who are their clients, and it's also good knowledge if you can determine who their competitors are. And there's two reasons for that. One is because you can help solve problems for them if you understand who else in the market is competing with them. And in addition to that, if you're looking for other jobs in the same field, if you're interested in one organization, it's highly likely that you might be interested in their competitors as well, since they're in the same marketplace. So for today, we're just going to look at two resources that I think are the easiest to get this information. One will be Handshake, and then the other will be LinkedIn. So for LinkedIn, most of you probably are familiar with LinkedIn at this point in time. Even if you don't have, if you're not active on LinkedIn or don't have a really well-developed profile, that's okay. Right now we're using LinkedIn just for research. But as you're looking at jobs and internships, it's really important to start considering updating your profile. And if you have questions about that, at the end of the presentation, we'll be sharing resources, and you can definitely make an appointment with one of our career counselors to review your LinkedIn profile and ensure that you have it up to date. I'm going to pause for a second because I see some questions popping up in the chat. So I just want to let you know that if you have specific questions as I'm moving through, to please place them in the Q&A section versus the chat, because we do have our career counseling team available to answer some of those questions as we're going through. And then at the end of the presentation, I will break for Q&A and try to answer as many of your specific questions as possible. Okay, so what you're going to do in LinkedIn, and it's just linkedin.com, and please don't pay for anything. You don't need an advanced account for the type of research that we're doing. You'll type in the organization name that you're trying to research. So in this case, we're going to use Google, and you'll do their company page. That's the main page. And what's helpful about this is, in addition, you could get some of this information on their website, but the main focus of the LinkedIn page for companies is really for talent acquisition and recruitment. So what they're doing is they're putting the most impertinent information for those students or candidates that they're trying to get interested in joining them on their team. So whereas their websites are more focused to like all audiences, whether it's potential customers, clients, potential employees, the LinkedIn pages are really usually customized to hiring talent. So that's one good thing to note about some of the information that's listed here. The other thing is I want to highlight the follow button in the left-hand corner there. Just like in Handshake, you can follow companies, you can do so in LinkedIn as well. And the same search criteria applies here. So recruiters who are actively looking for talent on LinkedIn can use all sorts of keyword search algorithms to find talent. So they could search by major, skill set, region, location. But one other variable that they can search by is candidates who are already following their companies. So again, one of the easiest things you can do is just click follow every time you find a company of interest, because one, your LinkedIn newsfeed will start getting filled up with their updates and announcements. So it's easier for you to track information and news. But also, when those recruiters start searching for talent by keywords, they're going to start with all candidates who already follow my organization, because that to them shows people who are already naturally interested in the company. So that is something that you want to start doing so you can start showing up in those searches. The other thing that's nice about the LinkedIn pages for companies is that they can, post to media. And so one of the recent posts that they put up here under about or jobs is if they have a team that they want to feature, or a new product that they want to feature, or an intern success story. And what's great about that, this is an easy way for you to understand the culture of a company, because you can actually see the people and what they're trying to highlight and feature. So for example, this was posted probably less than a month ago, and their Google Cloud team is actually hiring. So they made a whole video about what it's like to work on their cloud team. If you were interested in Google and saw this, even if you weren't wanting to work on their cloud team, but you talked to the recruiter about how exciting it was to see their innovation and teamwork, that you watched this video recently that they posted on their LinkedIn page about their Google Cloud team. As a recruiter, I'm going to be really impressed that you cared enough to, one, watch the video, and two, tell me why that was intriguing to you. Even if you didn't want to work on that team, you probably learned something about the culture or what we value as an organization. So these are some really easy ways to get data and information without having to do a lot of research per se, right? This is pretty easy to get. The second thing that I want to highlight with LinkedIn is how easy it is to find alumni that are already working at an organization that you're interested in. And the alumni piece is really helpful, because then you can see what other fellow Spartans are doing within those organizations, what they studied, and maybe some of the projects or courses that they've taken that might be similar to your own background. So those would be good things for you to highlight when you're interviewing with these companies as well. So in this case, I'm going back to the LinkedIn search bar, and I'm just typing in San Jose State, and the first thing that pops up is our school page. So that's what you're going to click on to find the alumni finder. This is what the alumni finder looks like. You'll see that we have our university listed there, and underneath the title will tell you how many alumni are active on LinkedIn from our university. So for us, it's about almost 255,000 alumni. So that is really awesome, because you have a lot of data here to see different people's career paths and what they're doing with their majors or their degrees. What you'll see on the left-hand side is a drop down menu, and there's an alumni tab where the little yellow arrow is. You're going to click on that, and that pulls up the alumni finder. So in this example, I'm interested, let's say, in an internship with Cisco, and Cisco's coming to the upcoming job fair. So I'm just going to type Cisco into the search bar, and what will happen is it will then pull up all of the alumni who currently work at Cisco and their profiles. Now, Cisco happens to also be one of our top employers that recruit Spartans. So if you look under the where they work column, they actually are the third one listed, and it will tell you how many alumni are working there. So I could also click on that, and that would take me to the same page. So these are the results of alumni that work at Cisco that come up for me. Now, this might be a little bit, you may not get the same results, because some of these people I have secondary connections to, and they're all related to HR and staffing, which is great, because these are the people who are hiring, so it's probably good to know who they are. But you may find that the results for you might be organized a little bit differently based on your background or connections. Either way, you can still get to the same data. It just may not show up this, in the same order for everyone. And then some things that you want to keep in mind when you're looking at profiles is a couple key areas that I think are helpful to determine what might be some commonalities between you and an organization or a job. Definitely look at their education, their job titles, their career paths. So what was their first job or internship, and then how did they build that? Those could be departments or other organizations that you might be interested in interning or working for as well. And then, is this potentially a connection for you now or in the future? So a lot of these alumni are great to connect with, introducing yourself as a fellow Spartan who has maybe studying the same thing that they studied, and that you're really curious about learning more on how they develop their career path in, let's say, you know, in this case, recruiting or hiring or human resources. If you're not ready to reach out yet, that's completely fine. You can just use this as a research component for now. But keep in mind that the next step would be to do some more active networking, and these would be good people to start with. And then the last tip I would say is the recruiters that you'll be meeting with, you'll know their names ahead of time because you're scheduling one-on-one time with them. I would definitely research them in LinkedIn and just read up on their profiles to get a sense of who they are. You may find some commonalities with them just by studying them that you can bring up during your one-on-one session with them, especially if they're alumni. Okay, the second area that I wanted to highlight for research is using Handshake. Since you're already in Handshake, they make it very easy for you to get additional information on the organizations. So in this case, this is the STEM fair, and you can see in the slide here that they'll list the companies that are attending, and then you can click on any of them to see their positions or their company pages. So in this case, let's say I'm interested in KLA, so I click on that, and then it'll bring up me to their company page. So this is what company pages look like in Handshake. And what's great about this that's a little bit different than LinkedIn, and I think more helpful for students, is that in addition to the information about the company, it will also list any open jobs or internships that you could probably apply to right now. And then what I really like is there's a question and answer feature on their page where students can ask questions about the company, and recruiters or company members can answer those questions, or current interns who are working there, other students that are working there as interns can answer questions as well. So some questions are, what's upper management like and how does it support its employees? How is compensation determined at KLA? Would you recommend KLA as a place to work and why? So this is really good information for you as you're trying to determine who might be a good fit for you as an employer, and then getting other employee and student feedback on that organization. So once you've gotten your research together and you have some ideas of why you might be a good fit for an organization, or you have a good understanding of what they're looking for, it's time for you to figure out, how am I going to introduce myself to this employer and kind of pitch my story in a very short amount of time. So this is probably the part that requires a little bit of practice. And so I'm going to give you some highlights of the things that should be covered in your introduction. So components of your intro or your pitch. Definitely an employer is going to want to know what you're studying or majoring in. Any interests that you have. So obviously your studies are going to be the key interest area, like why did you pick this major? Why are you wanting a degree in marketing? Why are you wanting to pursue software engineering? But then also any extracurricular interests you have are really interesting to employers too. So if you're a member of a club, if you are joining a professional student association, even hobbies sometimes can really be of interest to employers because it shows who you are as a person in addition to the specific skill sets that you want to use. Absolutely, what is your desired position? So if you're looking for internships, then make sure that you focus on internships. If you're looking for full-time opportunities, then talk about the full-time opportunities that you're seeking. We just did a talk recently with a recruiter from PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and we were talking about how students sometimes feel like they need to apply to as many positions as possible to see, if the more that they apply to, the higher their likelihood of getting one bite on an application might be. But the challenge with that is that some employers really want to know the one area that you feel you're the strongest in, and then push their candidates forward for that position. So if you are looking at various positions, you might want to schedule a one-on-one appointment with one of our career counselors to determine which position is the best fit for you, and whether or not you need to adjust your resume depending on the type of position that you're looking at. Because if you use a one-size-fits-all for multiple positions, it can become difficult for the employer to actually understand where your strengths might lie. Absolutely any related experience, and this can include class projects that you're doing. It can include part-time work. It can even include volunteer work. And then how do you fit with the company? This goes back to your values, what's important to you, and how does it align with what the company believes in or what they want to do? And then the big one is, why do you want to work here? So if everyone had the same qualifications and everyone, you know, had the same GPA and same experiences, at the end of the day, I will choose the person who I feel is most passionate about what I do or wants to work with this organization beyond just it's a paying job, right? So there has to be some connection with the passion that you might have for that organization. So what does this look like? This is an example of a student who is trying to answer some of these questions, and it gives her some good information to develop her pitch. So this is Dia. She's a marketing major. As far as her interest areas, she's interested in social media, digital marketing, and then just for fun, she is interested in cooking, so she's pinning recipes all the time. That is interesting, not only because it's something that kind of is unique to her, but also it's using social media for her own interest in kind of hobby areas as well. What is her desired position? Social media or marketing internship. And then any related experiences. What she came up with is that she's a member of the marketing club. She does a lot of collaboration on course projects. So for her, I think teamwork is the area that she wants to highlight. And then she organizes social media campaigns for her club. So when they're looking for new membership, she helps organize those campaigns. So those are good experiences that could definitely be transferable to a marketing or social media internship. As far as what does she love to do or how she might fit with a company, she loves figuring out ways to connect people with interesting technologies, and the employers that she's interested in value innovation and positive customer experience. So that's where she's trying to align her personal values with the values of a company or organization. So this would give her enough to probably start a good introduction. I'm going to give you an example of a professional pitch and what it might look like. So let's just start with like the student is got their chat up, they're seeing their recruiter on the other end. Sometimes the recruiter will say, hi, it's so nice to meet you. Sometimes they may just be waiting for you to start. So it's okay if you start the conversation and just say, you know, hello, my name is. So we'll run through this really quickly. This is Andrew, and he says, hi, I'm Andrew, it's so nice to meet you. And recruiter will respond, hi, Andrew, it's nice to meet you too. Thanks for scheduling a session with me today. Andrew then says, I'm an economics and statistics major, and I'm really interested in using data analytics and applying it specifically to marketing. In the classroom, I've been working a lot with data ranging from heart rates all the way to median household value. I've crunched and cleaned data, which allows me to also make predictions based off of those results. I have a lot of experience in the classroom, but I want to look for an internship this summer to get more hands-on experience in a more professional setting. I know Amazon does a lot of data analytics and applying it to marketing to optimize the user experience online. So I was wondering if you could tell me a bit more about your internship program. And so then the recruiter says, wow, that's great experience. And yes, we definitely are recruiting for interns with analytics skills. I see you uploaded your resume on Handshake. And can you tell me more about the projects you've listed? So what you want to do is make sure you give the recruiter enough information to then be able to ask you questions, usually that are specific to your resume. So this also reminds me to let you know that you can upload your resumes ahead of time to Handshake. And so if you have one posted, the employer, when they look at your profile, can also review your resume ahead of time. During the chat, you can also share your resume. So there is an opportunity to do so if they ask for your resume or do you have a resume, you could say absolutely and have that just share in the chat feature as well. Okay, so Almost there. You've got your research, you have an idea of your pitch and what you want to say, and then it's the day of the fair. So we want to just give you some tips on the day of. This is an example of what the experience looks like. So you'll be able to see the employer in your smaller box. And then this is an example of what the group session might look like. So you'll be able to see the employer directly, but the question and answer pieces will be done via the chat. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you set up your virtual studio. So just like, for example, today I'm using a background that has, San Jose State Pride, it's got Sammy Spartan on there. If I don't have a setting where I have, professional background, maybe, you're sharing a space with a lot of people, maybe there's a lot of things going on, everyone has some interruptions these days working from home. Like I have a dog, I also have 2 kids. Like if they're running behind me, I need to have something that is somewhat neutral and professional. So if you have a background that you can download ahead of time and use, that's really helpful. You want to make sure that you're also testing out your equipment ahead of time, especially with lighting. So lighting does make a difference, especially since we're in this virtual environment. Looking directly at the camera and being able to see some of your nonverbals is important to the recruiter. And so lighting does make a big difference. As you can see, like in some of the scenarios, you can barely even see this person's face. So the best strategy is to have a light right behind the laptop or camera that you're using so that it shines enough light on your face. It's still super important to dress and groom professionally. These are basically virtual interviews that you're having. And it also will make you feel more confident as well, right? I think if you are dressing the way that you want to be perceived, it also helps with your confidence and taking the situation seriously as well. So even if you choose to only wear professional on top and you're wearing like shorts or sweats on the bottom, that's totally up to you, but at least wear the camera, test your camera and see what you can see. From your waist up, you should probably be in a professional dress attire. Nonverbal communication is really important too. So it's okay to like do a quick wave when you're saying hello or nice to meet you. Looking directly into the camera helps as well to maintain that eye contact, but I can also admit and understand that it is a little awkward sometimes to just stare at a little space without having that interaction back. So it's something that you're gonna have to remind yourself to do. If you're just looking down the whole time or you're just reading your resume, that employer will feel that you might not be fully engaged with them. And so reminding yourself to make eye contact with the camera is gonna be really important. Good example of what that feels like, right, on the receiving end. And then prepare and practice common interview questions. I will show you where you can find our interview guide on our website, where we have a listing of common interview questions and answers. I'll also be showing you where you can find our big interview platform, which does virtual mock interviews for you based on industry that you want to get into. So there's industry specific questions. You can record yourself and even send those recordings to your career counselor, to your peers, to professors, if you want to get feedback from them on how you answered those questions. And then definitely you want to make sure that you're taking notes either during your session or after your session, so you know how you want to best follow up with the recruiters that you met with. When you start your session, please log in, I would say before, at least 30 minutes before, just to test your equipment and make sure everything's working. Then you can log in about 15 minutes before your chat time to ensure that you have everything ready to go. And then about 10 minutes before your scheduled time starts is when you'll be able to actually log in to your session. Be aware of your mute feature. This happens to all of us, but sometimes you automatically are on mute and then you start talking and the employer can't hear you. Also, if you're in a group session, please be sure that you're on mute, because you don't want to accidentally, say something or have a noise or interruption coming from your area. So be aware of your mute features. please keep your camera on even if your employer does not have their camera on. So for some Wi-Fi issues, you know, I know that sometimes we have to turn our camera off to ensure that we still are able to connect, at least with audio. But it's super important to have your camera on, even if the employer has turned theirs off, because they're wanting to see your communication style as well as your nonverbal communication. I see that someone raised their hand. Just so you know, I will not be answering direct questions when you raise hands. I'm going to get through the deck and then we'll stop for Q&A at the end. And then make sure that you're ready to introduce yourself with your recruiter and use that practice pitch that you have. This is our team. We are dedicated to supporting you, even if we're on the back end virtually. So at any time something isn't working quite right, or maybe your employer is not, you know, at the session, or you can't log in for whatever reason, we are available through our live chat. So during the fair, if you get stuck for any reason, go to our website and I will show you what the live chat looks like. But it's basically a little call out, like this blue call out, and you can type into it and then we will be able to answer any questions that you have during the fair. And then just some etiquette to remember. This is still a professional event. So if, you know, employers are definitely making decisions not only on your experiences, but also how you handle yourself. If we understand that virtual situations can be stressful, but still try to keep calm and maintain a pleasant demeanor and behavior. And if you cannot make your appointment times, please go in and cancel those sessions, because there are limited numbers of sessions. Some other student can actually then take your session if you're unable to make it. And also the employer will then not have to experience a no-show in their calendar. So, you know, as far as just professionalism, we get that things come up, but please make sure that you cancel those times so that we can ensure that everyone has a chance to participate. And then the last piece of all of this is once the fair is over, the recruitment process is not over. So you want to be sure that you follow up and continue connecting with those employers. So this is where LinkedIn is really great. You can also do this via email. When you're meeting with the employer before you end the session, you know, thank them and say, this has been really helpful. Is it possible for me to stay connected with you, or what's the best way for me to stay connected to you? Some of them might say, oh, you can find me or hit me up on LinkedIn. Others might give you their email address, but it is worth asking so that you know how to best follow up and remind them of why you're a good candidate and why you're interested in their role. In this example, I'm following up with a recruiter at Apple. I found her on LinkedIn. When you click on connect, there will be an option to add a message. Please always add a message. If you just start sending invitations to people, and I get these all the time from students, like for example, they may attend some of the workshops that I do, and they'll send me a LinkedIn request. Well, right now there's nearly 100 people on this webinar. I have no idea how I might have connected with you if you attended a webinar and just sent me a LinkedIn request. And so you have to provide people some context as to why they should connect with you or what you have in common. So in this case, you can only do 300 words or characters in this message, so it has to be short. I just said, Dear Lynn, it was a pleasure meeting with you at the SJSU STEM Career Fair. I wanted to stay connected given our conversation on your needs for an analytics intern. So I'm reminding this person of what we talked about in the position and my experience with data crunching and predictions. So a very specific reminder of what my skill is. I submitted my resume via Handshake. I look forward to hearing from you. So you should be doing this with every single employer that you meet with. And part of the reason is that a lot of students don't do this. So I have talked to recruiters and hiring managers before that said there were certain candidates that were not even on their final list, but then they got a message from them with a really nice email or quick update as to why they were interested in the position and a reminder of who they were which allow that recruiter to go back into their files and systems and look that particular candidate up. So it's a good way to also give yourself a second chance if for some reason they had passed you up the first round. And then make sure that you keep track of your follow-up activities and continue looking for job listings on Handshake or any of the other sites that you might be using. And then after you, if you accept an offer, it's really important to stop interviewing. We have had situations where students continue interviewing and then get into some hot water where they've accepted an offer, but then get a secondary offer later on and then are not sure how to handle that. So if you want to, if you're using competing offers for, let's say, salary negotiation, that's definitely a strategy you can use. But be sure to schedule an appointment with our career counselors so that you ensure that you're doing it in a way that is best outcomes for yourself without burning bridges with an employer. And then I want to remind you that job fairs are not the only way to connect with employers. In our events section, we list a lot of different employer connection events and also a lot of one-on-one opportunities where certain employers like Google or HP or City of San Jose, a lot of these organizations sometimes want to have what they call information sessions or meetups just for their company. So we will post those as well and you can attend those, and it's a great way to get to network with those organizations but also learn about what they're seeking in best practices. Sometimes they'll even talk about how to master their technical interviews or, you know, their top tips on resumes. So it's really good to start attending some of these other events as well. And then last but not least, these are the resources that might be best for you to access. So if you want instantaneous resume feedback, like let's say you have a resume, but you want to ensure that it is perfect before uploading it to Handshake, we have a VMOC system. It's called vmoc.com/SJSU that basically you upload your resume to, and it will give you an immediate feedback and critique. It will look at formatting, spelling, grammar, and then also your statements, so the accomplishment statements that you've listed as it relates to the type of industry that you want to get into. So for example, let's say you've written a lot of statements using maybe your strength is organization. You talk a lot about organized, organized, organized. You may be using that verb too much, or you may not be demonstrating other skill sets that are important to that industry, like let's say leadership or you know, analytics or problem solving. So the system will then let you know where you're short on some of those other skill sets and provide you examples for how you can enhance your statements to include those things. So VMOC is really helpful in that case. All of our resources are under our Career Center website. And before I break for questions, I just want to show you what that looks like. While I'm pulling that up, Kristen, Judy, is there anything that's popping up in the question area?
Yeah, there was a question. Is there any way for students to practice using the Handshake platform more than 10 minutes before the job fair?
No, so you can't get into the one-on-one sessions before that, unfortunately. The platform, I would say the best practice you can get is basically like thinking of the Zoom calls that you're doing with others, whether it's through class or through, sorry, I'm trying to share my screen really quickly here while I'm answering this question. And what you can do, can someone confirm that they can see the website?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. Thank you. I would say, you know, there's not too much. It's pretty intuitive once you're launched in there. I think the bigger thing is starting a little bit earlier to ensure that your camera and your audio and your Wi-Fi are all working well. So everyone, this is our website. It's just sjsu.edu/career center. And if you go to resources, you'll see all of the apps that we have. These are direct links to log in. So you can access Handshake this way. You can access VMock this way. You can access Big Interview this way. If you click on our resources, it'll basically be broken down to the different options. So if you're exploring your options, these are resources for exploring. If you're wanting to build experience, there's some resources on how to build experience. And then building your brand is where we're talking about resume writing and cover letter writing, and then VMock. So if you click on this, if you've never written a resume before, it's our PDF guides. They all look the same. Everything from formatting to how to use VMock is listed here. So it'll give you instructions on how to use VMock. And I just want to point out on this, there's also resume samples by major. So you can click on this and it will list all of these resume samples, basically covering most majors on campus. But if you're really curious about, you know, what a, let's say computer engineering resume looks like, then you can see an example ahead of time to help you get started. The other resource that's really helpful, upload your resume and get that quick review. You can continue with your university here. And then it will take me straight to the single sign-on, and then it will let you in. And we also have preparation for interviews. So earlier I had mentioned common questions that are asked. This is our interview guide. And so it will give you information on how to use Big Interview, which is the mock interviewing recording app, types of interviews, and then common interview questions. It will also allow you to practice. So like, tell me about yourself. We'll give you an actual video example of how to answer, tell me about yourself. And then you can write your own answers here. So if you haven't done a lot of interviewing before, most of these questions do get asked in one form or another. So it's really good to go through these. And then there's also a whole section on difficult questions, behavioral questions. So this is a good one to review before the actual fair as well.
Hey, Anita, this is Kristen. We've got a good question in the chat box.
Okay.
And that is it okay to sign up for a one-on-one meeting with an employer if you are interested in working for them, but the jobs posted do not match what you're looking for?
That is a good question. It depends. So I think if they're hiring, let's say you want to work for, I'm just making this up, like let's say Google, and they're hiring for technical, you know, let's say programmers or software engineers, and you want to work in their marketing department, probably not the best option to sign up with that recruiter, because they're going to be probably the recruiter or hiring manager for those technical positions and may not have any insight into marketing whatsoever. So in that case, I think you're better off trying to go through LinkedIn and connecting with someone that's more in that area versus trying to connect with a recruiter who may not directly be overseeing that area.
Thanks, Anita.
Yeah. So I think those are the main areas that I wanted to cover for now. We can open it up for the Q&A. It looks like most of the questions have already been answered. Okay, so there is a question for the graduate student virtual job fair. That fair is invitation only. And so there are prerequisites to attend the graduate fair. that are set by the College of Engineering and the College of Science. And so there is a GPA requirement as well as a number of units requirement. So students who meet the units requirement as well as the GPA, those colleges send the Career Center a list of those students, and that's how we determine who to invite. So if you feel like you should be qualified for that fair, you would have to reach out to your college to determine why you're not on that invitation list. So if it's for the College of Engineering, then you would reach out. Judy, remind me, is it Marta for College of Engineering?
I think it is Marta, yes.
Can you type her email in the chat box so that if students need to reach out to engineering, then they
Sure.
can email?
Sure, will do.
And if you're in the College of Science, it's your Associate Dean, Elaine Collins. And you can email her and inquire why you may or may not be on the list for invitations. Let's see, okay. The quick access employer list of preferred traits match my Handshake profile attributes except my major. I hope this clarifies what I'm asking. I'm assuming, Robert, you were the one who asked about whether or not you can apply to a company, but the position may not be directly connected. So if your preferred traits match and everything is there that doesn't match except for your major, but you feel you're qualified for those roles, then absolutely I would move forward with trying to connect with that employer. Emails that you want are going to be in the chat. So check for the chat to see those emails for Elaine Collins for College of Science or for Martha for the College of Engineering. Is there any way to submit or target resume to each employer, or does it depend on the employer? This is a good question. So if you are uploading your resume to Handshake for the fair, at this time, there's only one resume that you can list as your default resume, which would be what the employer sees. So in that case, you want to make your resume as broad as maybe the field, but not so broad that you're listing every single thing that you've done. So if you're looking for internships, let's say, in software engineering, then you would just say software engineering internships, and you would not specify the company. The only caveat to this is if you're applying directly to certain positions, then you can use whatever resume you want. But on the day of the fair, if the employer looks at your profile, they'll only get to see whatever you've listed as your default resume. So your default resume for the day of the fair, I would make sure that was updated and at least that it was generic enough that it's the field. So is it, marketing? Is it analytics? Is it accounting? And then whether it's full-time or internship. So I think if you have those two things outlined, that's broad enough that you can include a lot of experiences, but targeted enough that the employer has an idea of what type of area you want to get into. And then in addition to that, if any of those employers have positions posted that you qualify for, then the resume that you use to apply to those positions, I would make sure is very specifically targeted to those roles. Let's see, so we have about 2 minutes left, so I want to make sure that I'm getting through all of these questions here. Is there a way?
Anita, this is Kristen. There was a question regarding the GPA that's required for the graduate STEM fair.
Graduate STEM fair, any questions about requirements? If you can just email the people that were listed in the chat, that would be ideal. Because I don't want to get into too many specifics since that's really only for a certain segment of the population, and there may be other students who are not in that graduate STEM area, so I don't want people to get confused about GPAs at this point. So for the graduate STEM fair, that is the only fair that has special requirements that are invitation only. Everyone else, the only requirements to attend the fairs are if you have a specific major in those areas, and you'll know that when you try to register for the fair. So at this point, I want to thank you for spending your lunch hour with us, and I hope that you feel a little bit more prepared for the job fairs. Again, if you want a copy of the recording, there is a form in the chat box that you can fill out, and we'll send you a copy of the webinar. Also, please, if you would share your feedback with us, we want to make sure that we're providing information and resources that are beneficial to you. This is our survey. It's really short. It's just a bit.ly/CCSJSU interacting. And if you participants who fill out the survey also are entered into a raffle to win a $20 Amazon card. So that's always nice too. And if you do have any additional questions, you are able to directly email us at careerhelp.sjsu.edu. So we can put that in the chat as well. Okay, thank you so much, and best of luck at the upcoming fairs.